This is Canada Reads American Style, featuring two friends who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our host Rebecca from Michigan and Tara from Ontario.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Canada Reads American Style. This is Tara, and I'm here with my podcasting partner, Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm good, and you?
Good.
Yeah, ready to talk books?
Ready to talk books.
Okay,
Yes.
let's start off this episode with our current reads. Let us know, what are you reading now?
So I just finished the third book of Anne of Green Gables, the series, and then I'm currently reading book number 4, and it is Anne of Windy Willows, because that's the British edition that I have. I mean, it's the cover publisher, but the Canadian title is Windy Poplars. So that's the only book in the series that is different than the Canadian title. So I'm reading that.
Yep.
And then I just last night barely started Dandelion, which is one of the books on the Canada Reads list, and I got it as an ebook, and there are a lot of people waiting for it. So I was gonna try to parse out my Canada Reads reading for this year, but I thought, no, I better just get this one done and get it moved off for other people to be able to read before the competition.
Yeah, look at you being a thoughtful library user.
I really am. So how about you? What are you currently reading?
I have 2 books on the go. So my current fiction is a Canada Reads book, but it's from the long list, so it doesn't count towards the short list. But I had put this on hold as soon as it was announced because I really wanted to read it. And it is The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard. I am about, I guess, a third of the way through it. I'm really enjoying it. It's a very quiet book, so it's like a speculative fiction. For those who don't know, there is a valley, and to the east of the valley, there's the exact same valley that is 20 years east this way, 20 years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then to the west, another valley that is 20 years in the past. And people can travel back and forth, although it is not encouraged. And the lead character of her story is a young girl, Odile, who is an apprentice, trying to become an apprentice to the council. And the council are the ones who make the decision whether or not people travel back and forth to the past or the future.
So are all the people unless they passed away or something, but are all 3 time periods the same people are in this time periods? Can you say that or not? Or
yes, I believe from what I'm getting. So yes, sometimes things can happen that can negate a person's presence, right? So it's a very philosophical book, which I wasn't really expecting, although I guess considering what it's about, maybe I should have. But even before I started, I had read the author's bio at the back, and he did a PhD in philosophy from the University of Toronto and was a postdoctoral fellow at Harvard, where his work focused on the relationship between memory, emotion, and literature. So I read that, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting into some heavy shit, I think.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And normally philosophy-heavy books don't always work for me, but I am enjoying this one because it is philosophy-heavy, but it also has grounded in characters as well.
Do you think it would have been a good title for the competition without knowing yet what all the other books are in comparison?
I think it would have led to some interesting debate, because already in the book, the main point of action seems to be that the young protagonist has seen people visiting from another valley. And she now has to make the decision, does this affect her actions moving forward? I don't want to give away too much in the book, but yeah, like as an apprentice to the council, she is told that because she tells them that she has seen something, and they tell her, you cannot move forward in any way beyond with this action. You have to kind of pretend like you didn't see it happen.
Oh.
But yet, if you see anything different happening with the people around you, you have to let us know.
Ooh.
Right? So it's, and the person that it spins around has become a good friend of hers. So now she's getting to that point. Does she just ignore that this might be happening to her friend? It
Yeah.
is, see what I mean? And I'm only like 100 pages in, and it's like, yeah, there's like stuff happening, but at the same time, it's a lot of mental landscape that you're going through too.
And it almost seems, just from what you're saying and thinking about the other titles on the list this year, it might be a little too thoughtful or esoteric or something to
Hmm.
be in a competition with 2 memoirs, a genre title. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like it doesn't,
Yeah.
it's like one of these things doesn't belong. Maybe that one wouldn't have belonged, maybe.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yeah. It would be difficult to argue this versus a thriller. Like they're so very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm enjoying it. And then my second book is my current nonfiction, and it's a doozy. It's really
Oh.
good. It is At a Loss for Words, A Conversation in an Age of Rage by Carol Off. So you and I were lucky enough to see her at Eden Mills this past September,
Mhm.
in conversation with Tanya Talaga. And this is her book. She's essentially, it was released in September of 2024, so before your US election. But she looks at 4 words and how they've been co-opted from their original usage to mean something else. 4 words, yeah. Freedom, democracy, truth, and woke. Oh, actually, no, not just 4. Also choice and taxes. So she does a chapter on each of them.
Yeah.
I've just started the democracy. I've read the freedom one. She's very good. Like, she is an excellent writer. She's a journalist by training. That's what she did for her whole career. And she retired recently from the CBC. It is very accessible. She puts it out there. She goes back in history and looks at the origins of the word freedom, how it's supposed to be used, how it's been used. It's very good.
Now, is this only in the context of the US or Canada as well? Because I can't
No,
remember.
both. So
Okay.
she's Canadian.
Mhm.
I've read the freedom chapter. So she looks at the January 6th insurrection, but she also looks at our freedom convoy shit parade that happened in Ottawa. Sorry, I
Yeah. That's what it
so
was.
it was a shit parade. So,
Yeah.
and she looks at both of them and how both groups use the word freedom, how they're fighting for freedom and their freedom. But freedom has 2 definitions. Sorry, people, I'm getting into it. Uh, the freedom that all people should have access to jobs, home, healthcare, and the freedom to do whatever the hell you want without thinking about other people. And how
Yeah.
that is one particular group uses that second definition to maintain power, essentially privileges for itself without thinking of others.
So I'm just curious, is that sort of freedom to do whatever you want and screw everybody else? Is that just in her mind? Is that just like kind of an American thing? Because it is part of like the whole profile of the United States and people who live here. That's kind
Mm,
of what we're known for. So is she saying that that's really more us than, say,
uh,
Canada, for example?
no, because it's to a smaller extent in Canada,
Hmm.
but it's happening in both countries.
Yeah.
It is essentially a white person.
Really? How? I'm so
I know,
surprised.
aren't you?
It's funny when we saw her speak at Eden Mills, because again, like you said, it was September, and I was thinking, There is no way on God's green earth I'm reading this book. Like, I'm so sick of all of it, and I don't want to hear somebody talk about all of this." And now that he's in place, and the stuff that just recently happened with the plane crash and that awful, awful situation, and how he has politicized it, I'm never going to read that book. So I really look forward to you and I discussing it, whether it's here or just by ourselves. I really want to hear about it because it does sound like a great book, but honest to God, I don't have the capacity to read
Yeah.
it at this time.
I'll send you a little voice message after each section. Keep you updated.
I love that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
Okay, so now that I made it very political, let's move on to
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
yep, we can't help it. To our books are political. Let's just put it out there. Anyways, moving on to our topic of the day, we are actually going non-political, and we are talking about romance slash love stories, our favorite love stories that we have read. And neither one of us are romance readers. I read them more often than Rebecca does, but we don't read a lot of them. So who knows what we're going to bring you today?
Right.
Our take on it. It's our take on love stories.
Right. And I really told Tara I want to call it love stories because, again, as I've said so many times before, when I was younger, I read so many romances. I got completely burned out. And, I did that with like rice one time. Like I ate so much rice, I got burned out and I didn't eat it for like 10 years. So I think it's the same thing. I read too many romances and I still love a good love story in a book, but not the genre of romances because I just got burned out.
And I was when I had presented this subject to Rebecca, this topic, I was like so proud of myself. I'm like, oh, this will be great for February. Let's do it, but let's, we'll see what we come up with. I end up texting Rebecca yesterday going, I really wish I hadn't suggested this topic because it was really difficult to come up with topics or books. I did it, but I didn't enjoy it, people.
I'm just going to, full transparency, I have a cough drop in my mouth because Tara is making me laugh so hard that I have to not keep coughing. So I have a cough drop in my mouth. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, Rebecca, you're going to start us off. What's your first love story?
So with my list, I have 5 titles, as I think you do as well. And I really broke them into 5 different categories. So my first category is friendship love. And this is a book that I have recommended to adults who have read it, who have loved it, even though it is a children's book. And I really think that if you give it a chance, you will love it as well. Also, because some of these books I read a long time ago, I just took the description from Goodreads. So just to be clear about it, my memory's not that good. So it is called Bob by Wendy Mass and Rebecca Steed. And the description. It's been 5 years since Livy and her family have visited Livy's grandmother in Australia. Now that she's back, Livy has the feeling she's forgotten something really, really important about Gran's house. It turns out she's right. Bob, a short, greenish creature dressed in a chicken suit, didn't forget Livy or her promise. He's been waiting 5 years for her to come back, hiding in a closet like she told him to. He can't remember who or what he is, where he came from, or if he even has a family. But 5 years ago, Livy promised she would help him find his way back home, and now it's time for her to keep that promise. Every adult that I've recommended this to and who has read it has fallen in love with Bob. Bob and Livy have that kind of beautiful friendship that you love to read in a book. Often you see it in kids' books. And that's why I had to bring this one to the table because it is just unforgettable. Bob.
Okay, that sounds really good. I don't read children's books and I want to read that.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying is after I read it, and I don't remember exactly how it ends, but I remember telling people when you get to the ending, reread the ending because when I first read it, and I was like, okay. And then I went, wait a minute, what? And I went back and reread the ending and I went, oh shit, I would have totally missed it if I hadn't really listened to the ending. So I just highly recommend that when you read it, because I really hope you all read it, make sure you take your time with the ending. It is perfect. It is a perfect children's story, perfect book for adults, friendship, love story. Yep.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. My first book is The Outlander by Jill Adamson. So not the Diana Gabaldon one. No.
I know.
I saw you shake your head. No.
Yeah.
This is The Outlander by Jill Adamson. So it was first published in 2007. So it was her debut novel. She's Canadian. And I think you would love this book. I also read this several years ago, so I'm going to do a quick synopsis. So in 1903, a mysterious young woman flees alone across the West. At 19, Mary Bolton has just become a widow and her husband's killer.
Oh.
And now she is being tracked down by her two ruthless brothers-in-law who are in pursuit, determined to avenge their younger brother's death. So I know it doesn't sound like a love story, but Mary does meet someone along the way, William. And I just remember, I can't remember how I found this book, but when I was looking through my list, I was like, wait a minute, there's a love story in there that I absolutely adored. So that's why I'm included this here. And then there is a follow-up called The Ridgerunner, which is the follow-up to their story, which I also adored. So that's what I'm putting out there. It's an adventure story, but there's a love story in it.
See, that's the kind of book I like. That,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I
You
put
would
a
love
little,
this one.
I put a star next to that one because I do
Yeah.
think I would like that one.
Okay, back to you.
My next category is queer love story. And this is a book, and I meant to look it up and I forgot to look up how to pronounce the author's last name again because it is, I can't remember, but it is Cam and Beau by Maria, and it's spelled Cichosz. And I'm not going to try to butcher her name here. So I did interview her after I read the book, and I loved this book. And it was supposed to have a sequel, but I haven't seen one. So I don't know if she's still on track to do that or not. But here is the description. Cam and Beau are best friends, roommates, and massive potheads. Life is sweet, except for one crucial thing. Cam will never get up the nerve to tell Beau Larky he's in love with him. Cam is a man of thought, not action, and would rather linger in doubt than risk losing the friendship. That is, until the mysterious and unwelcome involvement of a mutual friend with an unshakable conviction that Beau reciprocates Cam's feelings and needs to be told the truth. And Maria has a PhD. She teaches at the university level. She's a deep thinker, very philosophical. So there's a lot of philosophy in the book. And I remember when I interviewed her, I said, for those of us who aren't really into philosophy, do you think we're still going to get the story? And absolutely. It is an amazing love story that was so real life because it is frustrating. It makes you want to just go, oh, for God's sakes, just tell him you love him, that kind of thing. And I had so much fun reading it. It was painful. It was real. It was beautiful. I wanted more and more and more of Cam and Beau. I love these characters, even though they are deeply flawed characters. I loved it.
I love that you have categories. I'm not
Oh, yeah.
surprised that you have categories.
I always have to put
Yeah.
it. I'm a, as you know, I'm a spreadsheet kind of person. I got to
Yeah.
have my categories.
Yeah. I love that you have categories. People, you're just lucky you're getting 5 titles from me. So I don't.
I love
But I
it.
love your categories. Okay. Book 2. I did say at the beginning that I don't read a lot of romance, but there is one writer who she is a go-to read for me, and that is Uzma Jalaluddin. I love her books. Yeah. I could pick all of them, but I'm throwing the Hana Khan Carries On, which I believe is her second book. I just love them because they're Muslim characters. They're traditional romance books, except that they're not, and that they're Muslim characters, and they're Muslim characters who are in everyday situations. And I love them. I love the community that she portrays in her books. There's a strong sense of community. There's always a strong sense of issues. Like there's an issue that she's focusing on. Like I think in the Hannah Khan carries on, it's gentrification. And then there's always a beautiful romance or love story. And I love her books, and I'm very excited. She also has a cozy mystery coming out this
Oh,
spring. Yes.
oh,
But
that's
she is
really
a
interesting.
go-to author for me. I really adore her romance books.
As soon as you said your go-to author in romance, I knew that is who
Yep.
it was going to be. I 100% knew. My next category is hetero love. I have
Mm.
my standard romance, and this is one that was a Hallmark movie. I don't even know, back in the day. It is The Magic of Ordinary Days by Anne Howard Creel. And it is Olivia Dunn, a studious minister's daughter who dreams of being an archaeologist, never thought that the drama of World War II would affect her quiet life in Denver. She finds herself pregnant and banished to a rural Colorado outpost, married to a man she hardly knows. Overwhelmed by loneliness, Olivia tentatively tries to establish a new life, finding much needed friendship and solace in two Japanese American sisters who are living at a nearby internment camp. And I had seen the movie, and it was Carrie. What's that actress name? Carrie with the really
Oh,
curly
Fisher?
hair.
No,
No,
no, but the
the young. Oh, I can't think of her name. I'll put a link to the movie because the movie was so great. And anyway, so I saw the movie, Hallmark movie. I loved it so much and knew it was a book. And finally, a few years ago, I read it, and it's very true. It's very true to the movie, except for one part of it, which I won't go into. But if you haven't, if you'd like a nice, just a really sweet, romantic story with an edge because of this, the Japanese American, the internment camps and that whole thing, it that is actually really fascinating. And there are German POWs involved. So it gives you a little bit more than just the romance, but the romance is just so beautiful and sweet. So read the book, watch the film. I it will always be in my top favorite romance stories.
I love that you always have movie suggestions too. Nice.
Well, it's weird because I always say how the book is always better, but in all of these cases, pretty much that I'm talking about, whenever I talk about them, I saw the movie first and loved the movie and then read the book. And I accept the fact that the I think it's the other way around. It's harder, right? Where you read a book
Mhm.
and you love it so much, and then you go to the movie and you go, "What the hell?" You know what I mean? But I love the movies so much, and then I can appreciate what's different in the book and the beauty of the book.
Yeah.
So I think that's why. But that's a good point. I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. You do. Okay, I'm going to steal one of your categories and for my friendship book.
Okay.
And it is The River by Peter Heller. I loved this book, and it is about two young men, Win and Jack, who always go on an annual like canoe slash fishing trip, usually up in northern Canada. And in this book, they're doing that, and they come across, I don't want to ruin anything, bad shit happens, and they get caught in the middle of it. Their friendship is beautiful. Like
Mm.
I cried at the end of this was the first Peter Heller book I read.
Hmm.
I loved it. I love these two men and their friendship. Stunning. If I could put a Canadian comparison, it's going to be The Brickworks by Lucy E. M. Black, which we both love. And again, the two male characters, that friendship, because at least I rarely read books that have just beautiful male friendships when they are truly just love each other as people
Hmm.
for their friendship. And I think both of those books do it so well.
Yeah. I guess it's just people think it's makes them too vulnerable or something because we
Hmm.
know that in real life men have close male friendships,
Yeah.
but we don't really often see it in literature. So I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. My next is a senior love story. And I read this book when it came out, which I believe was in 2015. And it's Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruf, which was made into a movie. But I love this book so much, and I thought I will never taint the memory of this book by watching the movie, because I'm pretty confident they probably wrecked it. But I don't know. So if you've seen the movie and you loved it, let me know. But nobody will respond to that. Anyway, because it won't be true. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, all right, I'll shut up about it. Okay. Addie Moore pays an unexpected visit to her neighbor, Lewis Walters. Addie's husband died years ago, as did Lewis's wife, and in such a small town, they naturally have known of each other for decades. Addie and Lewis have been living alone in houses now empty of their families, and the nights are so terribly lonely. So Addie and Lewis develop a relationship that because again, I don't think we often see older people in romantic relationships. And I loved this about the book. And again, I read it 10 years ago, and I've never forgotten this story. It's just so beautiful.
That sounds good. I'm going to have to add that to my list.
Yeah, it's not a very big book, and it's part of a series that Kent Haruf did of this community. And so they say this is sort of like the last book, because I think he passed away, but the last book of this series. But I think there might be maybe sort of interconnected, but they're not. You can read them as standalones, as far as I know.
I'm not familiar with his work at all. Okay, my fourth book is Leaving Earth by Helen Humphreys. I've brought this book to the podcast. I can't remember what episode it was, but sometime in 2024 when I started my Helen Humphreys reading challenge. So I won't go into it too much, but just to say that it's set in 1933, Toronto. The famous aviatrix, Grace O'Gorman, is going to she's trying to break a world flight record by continuously circling in the air above Toronto and Toronto Island. And her partner when doing this is the inexperienced Willa Briggs. Willa is married. Her husband, of course, remains on Earth while they're up there flying, although he is also a famous pilot who is in charge of getting their supplies to them during the flight. And I love the relationship that develops between the two women, between Grace and Willa. It's beautiful. And that's all I'm going to say. I loved it.
Yeah.
I love Helen anyways. I love her books.
I mean, yeah, I can't wait to read some of her work, and I should probably get on it since you keep talking about so many of these wonderful titles. It's the dog one is the one that'll be the first one I read, because it's a dog thing. So
yeah.
Well, my last book, I am calling it an unconventional love story because of its format. So this is book art. So it's a story about two people, Griffin and Sabine, and it's called the Griffin and Sabine Trilogy, which I will not list all the titles. Well, I might in the show notes, by Nick Bantock. And here's the description, and then I'll say a little bit more about it. Sabine writes, "It's good to get in touch with you at last. Could I have one of your fish postcards? I think you were right. The wine glass has more impact than the cup. Signed, Sabine." But Griffin had never met a woman named Sabine. How did she know him? How did she know his artwork? Who is she? Thus begins the strange and intriguing correspondence of Griffin and Sabine. And since each letter must be pulled from its own envelope, the reader has the delightful, forbidden sensation of reading someone else's mail. Griffin and Sabine is like no other illustrated novel, appealing to the poet and artist in everyone, and sure to inspire a renaissance in the fine art of letter writing that tells an extraordinary story in an extraordinary way. So when you look at these books, and they may be difficult to get hold of, but I was talking about it to our friend Sarah in Nova Scotia, and I believe her library had it. And our copies in Sacramento were in the archives. So you had to go in and kind of read it there, but you literally open it up and you are pulling letters out of little envelopes and postcards, and it has all these pieces to it. And it is like they say, it's like reading someone's, correspondence, which feels a little bit like, oh, I shouldn't be reading this. But the story is very it goes off in directions you don't expect. And I didn't even know this, but that, like I said, I had read the first 3. It appears that there are 7 in the series because it continues beyond. So I thought I'm going to try and see if I can get my hands on the other copies. I'd go back and reread them as well. But it is a story. It is a love story that defies description and is absolutely fascinating. But it's the book arts that will pull you in to this amazing creation. So I highly recommend, if you can get your hands on it, take a look at it.
It's a fantastic choice. I have not read them, but I love that choice, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really something special. And I think it was written, I want to say maybe like around 2006 or 5, something like that. So it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing.
I remember seeing them in the bookstore and being intrigued, but never picking them up. And now that you say the publication dates roughly, it's when I had like super young children and was barely reading anything beyond, I have no idea what I was reading back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now I'm going to try and find them too.
Yeah, I am going to go back and see if I can find them locally here in Michigan.
Yeah.
And then if not, I thought, it might be kind of fun to buy them. We'll see.
Yeah.
They're probably very expensive. I'm sure they're kind of like I said, it's book art. So they're probably really, really expensive.
Yeah. Okay. My last title is also slightly unconventional too. And it is a memoir, and it is called The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards by Jessica Waite. And I know even the title doesn't sound like it should be a love story, but so it's a memoir, and Jessica's husband, I can't remember how long they've been married, but they had a young child. So, and they'd been in a relationship and had a young child, and he dies unexpectedly, not at home. Like, she lives in Canada and he was visiting the US for work and died of a heart attack.
Ooh.
And after his death, going through his stuff, she finds out that he had a secret life, which then made her, I don't want to use hate because I don't want to put like hate on her. Like, it's not my place, but it tarnished her love for him. Let's just say that, because she found out a lot of stuff about him. So then this memoir, she travels, not physically. It brings us, it's a journey through their relationship, even right from the beginning, through marriage, parenthood, to this point. So she eventually finds her way back to loving him. So it's a love story in a roundabout way. Like, she does find her way back to loving him, but it is a journey for her. And I loved this memoir. I read this one. I love this one.
That is definitely an unconventional love story. And I love that she kind of comes full circle in that journey. That's amazing. Yeah, I want to read that one.
Oh yeah,
just for the title alone. My gosh,
it's a great title, and the cover page. It's a beautiful, like a really not beautiful, but it's like a very graphic, cool cover.
Yeah,
as well.
Cool.
Yep. Okay, Rebecca. There we go.
We did it.
We did it. You have our version of love stories.
That's right.
As twisted as they may be at times.
Exactly. And I should have said too up front, what I consider a love story doesn't always have a happy ending, by the way, but it has a real life ending. So just be aware. I don't even know. I didn't stop to think about all of these, but I'm not a happily ever after kind of reader anymore. So I like a real love story. Yeah. And I think that we probably gave our audience a lot of choices here.
Yes. I mean, I just said twisted. They're not twisted. I think I meant more like non-traditional, in that they're not their classic happily ever after romances.
Yeah.
I like a couple of those, but I like more of a love story.
Yeah.
In its different forms.
Perfect way to end that. That's beautiful.
Let's end it there. Okay. Happy reading, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our bookish journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing Canada Reads American Style wherever you listen. You can connect with the podcast and Rebecca on Instagram at Canada Reads American Style, and with Tara at On a Branch Reads.
Until next time, keep reading.